Good morning and welcome to Weekend Walkabout in our gardens and yours virtually.
This is gardenataz.org, and I'm Janet McConaughey.
I'm Stephen Nicola.
And we're talking today, we're starting off with In Our Garden, and we might as well get the ice disaster out of the way.
Yep.
And move on into nicer things like dreaming of designs and color.
Yeah.
Yep, witch hazel's blooming right about now.
Yep,
Steve
they
was at
are.
the Dawes Arboretum, taking pictures of them just this week.
Yep.
And our daughter Sonia Nicola is moderating the chat and is an excellent gardener, has always been since she was a little kid, and took all the weeds I pulled out and planted them in her own garden. She's also a professor at the University of Toronto, and that makes her very well qualified to handle technical problems with Zoom. So you've got a gardener techie person to talk to there, which is really a marvelous help. We've been putting more articles up this week because we keep finding more that we go, my gosh, we've never even put these up, but we're also finding more to write about all the time. That's why we run the website. So as March begins, we have this ice disaster and color and whatever issues you have that you want to come up with. We can't begin to put everything on the website, but we try to organize it with the things that are most timely in the this week section, as we do now. So ice disaster, like many of you, we were out of power last week.
And even our black labs got chilly.
Yeah, it was, we got down to about 40.
42, I think it was.
42 in the house, and the dogs were kind of cold. And it was pretty. It was very pretty when it got started. Even the grass was, every blade that was sticking up in our tall grass area had its own little coating of ice.
Yeah.
But this is our wonderful big white pine out at the end of our driveway, dropping major branches all over. I left them there.
Yeah.
I left them there
because it was
when you see this picture, because there's still ice all over the tree and they were still dropping. I went inside and told Steve I'll have to wait in the afternoon when the ice is dripping off of the tree, get those branches out of there. One of the neighbors came over and moved the branches, and I didn't see him do it. I don't go under trees loaded with snow and ice. Not a good thing to do. While I was shoveling last night, there were more coming down. So we lost some major branches, and our beautiful mugo pine bent went to the ground, stood itself back up again, but it's back down.
And now it's back down again.
I've heard people say when there's an ice storm, well, why couldn't one of the crummy trees fall over? Well, the crummy trees don't have enough foliage to hold enough ice to be weighty enough to fall over. So the crummy trees aren't going to go down. It's going to be the good trees. And we had
and weak branches. Yeah,
and we had at our measure about 3/8 of an inch of ice. So we talked to well, actually, because today is the 47th anniversary of the worst ice storm in our personal history, even though it didn't make the Weather Service's list. I went back into my records because I got interested having watched that tree fall over. Yeah. I thought, oh, how much weight is there in ice? It is an amazing
amount of weight.
I'll tell you exactly how much later, but you need to know how much is on there, about 3/8 inch of ice. I walked around the far side to look and see what I could do. I dragged a couple of the branches off of the street, and that's what the tree looked like. And this is what it looks like this morning. It's dropped. I stopped shoveling where you can see the snow piled up, because the tree was dropping branches right and left.
This one, and there's a couple off of that way that had a little bit to worry about.
So we have a 6 foot wide, 6 foot tall driveway currently. If you can get out that little space right there, run the gauntlet. That's what's going on here. But it's going on everywhere. Portland, Oregon had 10 inches of snow.
LA, it had snow.
The bamboo was leaning down, 12-foot bamboo leaning down and laying on the hood of the next door neighbor's car. It does come back up.
Yeah, bamboo will come back up unless it snaps.
Most plants will come back up. The snapping is one thing, but most plants will come back up. Margie sent us pictures of the viburnum that she sees out her window. She said the poor plant, January 22nd, January 25th, February, and now again. Now, the nice thing is that it's a shrub, and that is that is the definition of a shrub. They can renew their trunks regularly.
So even if it lost, if it's a healthy root system, it will come back.
And you can train it
might
back.
take years to get to that size, but
I don't know.
maybe
if I burn them like that, yeah, maybe 3 years. Whereas it'll take 50 years to get a white pine the size of ours there.
Oh yeah.
So Steve went out and had fun taking pictures of ice. The light was not great during the
On and off.
He had to run to catch it when it was there. I like this one. That's very neat. A little bit of star in that. That's kind of creepy though.
I'm not sure what it was on. It's a tree branch, but
those were falling out. Yeah, it's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. So Steve was taking pictures and I was working on the weight issue. If you have a 50-foot tree, say a 50-foot mature maple, given the amount of surface area it has, if you put 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 to half an inch of ice on the tree, as they were now there, you've put 12 to 15 tons of ice on the tree, which is what the average gray whale weighs. So
think of it, 12 to 15 tons.
The tree itself weighs 12 to 15 tons too. So it's holding up its own weight plus double. One researcher that I read when I looked into this earlier years ago actually took branches and weighed them, measured the ice on them, weighed them, let the ice melt off and weighed them again, and found that these branches were carrying 8 times their own weight, most of them. Now, how does it stand up though? You know, you get a whale sitting on top of there. All you got to do is get a bit of a wind, and that tree stands up because if it has a good root system, which is out at least as far and probably a lot further than the branches, then it has on its roots 50 tons of soil holding it down. And that's what holds it up. Every little tiny root going out, it makes a difference to a tree and helps it hold up. And you can kind of see why a tree with multiple trunks, multiple main branches would split apart when that weight comes down through the middle of them. Whereas you're more likely to just crack a top or a branch coming down on a more upright tree. It was fun playing around with photoshopping whales. I'm also working right now, and we'll write this up and put it on the website. I'm working on how many miles of pool ball packing. So that's that kind of air bubble packing that you get sometimes, the little rectangles full of air. We popped the rectangles and put pool balls in them instead. What my granddaughter is holding there is 2 pounds of pool balls. And as best we can figure it right now, it's something on the order of 6 miles of that stuff hanging on a tree, right, would be equal to the weight.
Heck of a light system.
So it's amazing that these trees stand up at all. And what's even more amazing is look at that prairie drop seed.
The grass,
which is coated with ice, is still standing up fine. And even better, that purple coneflower, I mean, that's rock steady. And it reminds me of a time when Sonia and our son were little. I was not home and someone stopped by to see the garden. And we've always told people, sure, you can just walk around, make sure you shut the gate. Somebody was walking in the garden and the kids were back there, and it was fall. And I had cut some things down and left some things up. And whoever it was asked the kids, does your mom cut all this stuff down? And one of the kids said, it's a paraphrase because it's what the adult told me. The kid said, my mom leaves it up if it hurts to fall on it. And purple coneflower qualifies for that, I think. And this is, it is amazing how much ice they can hold. So go out and look for color instead. Our first iris reticulata coming up is buried out there underneath at least 2 feet of pine boughs.
It's such a beautiful yellow too. It's a gorgeous little one.
And it will be fine, but I won't see it for another year now. And the ice might keep it.
Blue color flowers drive me crazy. This iris was really more toward the purple range. I wish I had time to do some kind of study to see which setting can get that color more.
What's the color?
Yeah, I mean there are irises that are that color.
Yeah,
but the ones I was taking were not that color.
Snowdrops are up.
Yeah.
Adonis is up. That's the yellow one in the background.
Yeah.
And while I was poking around looking for color, I found that, oh, and the deer are out.
Yep.
They've been snipping off branches at the base of the willow tree.
You could tell by the cut, it's not a smooth, it's
It's
got a little
you
bit
can
of a
see it's right
tear
there,
on
a
it.
little tear, an angled cut and a tear. So, well, so the deer are back. And even if I wasn't pretty sure that that was deer, not rabbits doing that, the next bush over, it's got a buck rub on it. So yeah, I was
Yeah, that's not
I'll be-
mice or rabbit chewing. You could see the rip. Sorry, you could see the rip of the bark.
Yeah.
That's buck rub.
and I was going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo for which branch to take out of the lilac this year, but I guess the deer has eeny, meeny, miny
Yeah.
for me. So I kept looking, and you know, the grasses, they're falling apart right now, it's shattering, and then just things aren't fun. So I went and bought some shoelaces. They're
You
terribly
needed more
tie terribly though. They will not stay tied.
Tied. Yeah.
And took the dogs out for a walk because it was a beautiful day when March came in. And found that the moles are working right across the path there. Starnell's moles are heaping up soil all over in our son's yard. He's near the lake, and Starnell's moles tend to like water
Yeah.
areas. You know, if you get that happening in your yard where you got big mounds of soil that a mole, a very busy, efficient mole, has been pushing out, and as it clears its tunnels at the bottom, don't get upset with it. Just rake it around. That's free soil that was
Yep.
leaching nutrients below the root zone,
Spread it out.
because they bring them up from a long way down, the Starnell's moles do. Then I went over to Bogey Lake Greenhouse and said, show me something that's in color. And that made me feel better.
It's always nice to walk into conservatories, greenhouses, things like that
Especially
in the
this-
winter. A day like today, I think is better outside with the bright light and the snow, but on a dark gray, nothing happening day, nothing beats walking into.
Yeah. And there's always something there that I think, oh, I have to have one of those. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I have to have one of those.
Fortunately, she didn't bring it home.
Yeah. And then you find that, oh, look, there are snowdrops. They are blooming. They are coming up. They are doing their thing. And we met people at Bogey Lake Greenhouse 2 weeks ago, and then Telly's a week ago, to see what they're doing in terms of propagation. I should have taken pictures of the group, but I didn't. This is my granddaughter's picture. You might see that I've got it canted to one side, but it was fascinating to see what they were doing, to see while we were talking, someone sticking something on the order of 2,000 cuttings just while we were sitting and talking.
I think the vast majority of those are cuttings, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, they're working on cuttings right now.
Yeah.
And pretty cool. We're going to go back when they start potting things up to the next step.
Next up.
Yeah, we'll
Pot
watch
up
from
there.
there. And Steve took off because the car was warmer than the house with no power. Went
And
back to Longwood because we managed to lose a bunch of the pictures that we took.
I'm glad she said we. It was me. Yeah.
I don't
That
think
lost
so.
them. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he went back to Longwood Gardens, and while he was in the area, went by Winterthur, and he brought us some color here. Look at these two trees. They don't look like much when you stand here and just look up the hill at them. But look at that bark.
And
Isn't
that story,
that's a-
isn't that gorgeous?
I
It's-
want a Stewardia in my yard.
And
They're marginal for us. They did find the one that we
And my
planted for
mom's
Steve's dad in Livonia, but we're on the edge up here.
Yeah.
It's probably going to get killed
it
back.
might take another 10 years before they will stay
And
here.
this is Stewardia pseudocamellia that blooms in late June with big white camellia-like flowers on it. It's and gets a nice fall color too.
Really nice.
And the other one is a paper bark maple.
And we've raved about paper bark maple a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the all-time great bark trees.
Yeah. And I wonder,
Period.
and I wonder if I'll be alive when the Stewardia splits itself in two.
Yeah.
See
You
that?
can see the
included-
crack.
You can see the included bark.
Whoops, sorry.
Oops. You can
Right
see the
there.
included bark, yeah, where it's turned under.
Yeah. There's a little bit on the,
Yeah.
now that you showed the
So we
paper
hope-
bark, it's got one too.
Yep. So we had hoped that we could do some pruning on some of the things that we put into our last newsletter and actually show you the afters of some of the before pictures there for new things. But as it
Yeah.
turned out, there were no good pruning days, wet days and days when there's not,
Yeah.
when there is going to be too much cold.
See
It's not
that.
good. But we do have things coming up. this Wednesday, March 8th, we'll be at the Waterford Township Library. We've got a big project going on there in figuring out how to safeguard the gardens as construction work is done all around them. And starting this Tuesday and then 2 more Tuesdays, I'm doing a 3-part design workshop. If you go to the website on our home page, it has a where we're appearing link, and you can go there. It tells you where we're going to be. So, were there any questions before we go on to pruning that?
There's not much people reporting on various early bloomers and keeping an eye on the deer coming through and things like that. We did have a question from Michelle about, I wonder if the flowers that were open and then iced, whether that ruins the pollen for the pollinators. I thought I'd get your impression. I have a text conversation with a very sleepy Paul Kozak about it, but I wasn't sure what you guys knew about that.
Well, pollen grows. So if the flower was still in active growth and was not the flower itself, the flowering parts, the petals could get wrecked. But if the flowering parts were still intact and not frozen, it could still produce more pollen. But I don't know how, and I guess it would be different for every flower, how delicate each one is.
And where's the pollen at? Is it in a?
But any that were tightly closed are now going to open, and there'll be more pollen there. But I don't know what's going to happen with those.
Yeah, so I texted our entomologist, our bee expert, or rather I texted his wife because apparently he's still asleep, and she kept shaking him trying to get answers. And he says, the frozen pollen might be fine or it might not. So that is the entomologist's answer.
Thank you, Professor Kozak. That's good. That's good. And Nancy says that she's been doing some pruning already on evergreens, and how will the snow affect the cuts? It shouldn't be a problem at all.
The snow,
the wet, the taboo against pruning when it's wet is you moving spores on wet tools and hands from one open area to another. Once you're done cutting, then each branch is on its own, and the snow is going to be fine on those.
I was trying to get to.
And I think that's actually all we've got. People are expressing that they were really happy to go to Tally's. Jean and Stacy in particular said it was really, really nice to be there. Thanks for arranging it.
Well, I'm really glad that we could. We have some excellent. This whole industry, the whole horticulture industry, has a lot of very wonderful people in it. People who are in the business because they love the business, not because they're in it for money. And George opened up his greenhouse, his brain, his time to us, and he does that kind of thing all the time for people.
When you have good people.
Oh, and I just thought I would say, because I know a lot of people jumped in after we did the initial intro, we are still doing winter pruning this session. We're just doing the in our garden immediate issues first, but yeah, we will get to winter pruning.
Yeah. So here we go. So that covers what's going on in our garden, ice and dreaming of color. And now we'll move on to late winter pruning.